and Khartoum and Juba are holding talks in order to stop and resolving post-succession disputes. The two countries have broader disputes, including the status of Abyei and royalties that Juba should pay to use a pipeline that passes through Sudan to export its oil. And we have more about this in the following report.
South Sudan's ministers of Foreign Affairs, Defense, Interior and Petroleum met with their Sudanese counterparts in Khartoum for the first time since the formation of the National Unity Government in Juba in May. The head of South Sudan's diplomatic mission, Deng Alor, said at a joint press conference with his Sudanese counterpart, Ibrahim Ghandour, that there are difficulties in the relationship Sudan and conveyed a message from President Kiir to President Omar al-Bashir calling for a quick resolution for the differences. Ghandour, on his part, said that the first priority of Sudan is to build relations with South Sudan given the historical ties between the two nations. The two countries have border disputes, including the status of Abyei and royalties that Juba should pay to use a pipeline that passes through Sudan to export its oil. South Sudan is one of the poorest countries of the world after seceding from Sudan in 2011. The new country quickly plunged into a deadly and devastating civil war in 2013 between two of its most important political figures, Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. The rebel leader Riek Machar became vice president in April, forming a national unity government with President Salva Kiir.
Welcome back, and to shed more light on the situation between Sudan and South Sudan, we are joined in studio by Ambassador Saeb Sharabi, former Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs. Hello, Mrs. Ambassador, and welcome to our show.
Hello, thanks for inviting me.
Now we have disputes between Sudan and South Sudan for a long time. What are the most pressing ones?
Well, of course, it is very obvious that South Sudan was supposed to be in good relations with Sudan since its independence. But it went into war with itself. You know, there was a civil war in South Sudan since its independence, like 4 years since they had continued to in civil war. And you know that Garang was the first one to lead the South Sudan independence, and he was the leader. He was a charismatic leader. All the South Sudanese were loyal to him. But after his tragic death, then Salva Kiir took over, and here started the problems because the opposition leader was more aggressive and more powerful, and he has his own followers. So. And both sides are really, they have a lot of arms and ammunition that could make this war continue. So this is a very good step that he was appointed as a vice president, and then now they are sharing the power. Salva Kiir has offered him to share the power until the elections in 2018, and then during this time, they have to really work for peace, because having an independent, peaceful country in South Sudan will help Sudan to deal with this country. But if it continues to be poor and weak, and it has a civil war, then it will have its repercussions on Sudan. So that's why the problem of immigrants, the problem of poverty spilling over the borders. So Sudan cannot. Sudan itself has a lot of problems on its borders. So how can it deal with more problems coming from South Sudanese? So that is why the problems of South Sudan, the internal problems should be solved first, and then it should continue to have good relations with its neighbors, Sudan, with South Sudan, as it is supposed to be.
Okay, but now they are holding the talks together in order to these disputes. How optimistic about the seriousness of these talks?
I'm not very optimistic because, as you know, power is a struggle, and in South Sudan, the two leaders, they want both to run for presidency. And next year, or the year after, we will see how this unity government is going to work. Keir Mashar, he promised that he is going to stop any belligerency with Salva Kiir, but let us wait and see. There are also sanctions that could be imposed by and there is a Security Council resolution that imposes sanctions, but how far are the sanctions powerful enough to stop any aggression between both, or to stop the civil war that has been going on during the last 4 years? Also, from the start, Sudan is also a big country. It's the third largest country in Africa, and it was all of African countries were looking at the wealth of agricultural products of Sudan, because it was called the basket of food for Africa. But unfortunately, the poverty that is used as a tool for war in Sudan is increasing. Like, for instance, you see Darfur, you see south of Kordofan, you see Abyei, you see all these Al Jazeera, Niamey. These are very, very poor areas that are used as a war space in order to launch between the different parties, as you said, the Janjaweeds and all these. They still exist, and they still want to separate. And separation, I don't think it is for the interest of Sudan, because the best interest would be to stop the war that is happening in these regions, and to start stimulating the resources by asking the people to use these resources for their own good, because unfortunately they are poor and they are depending on the government in everything, and the government is not able, because, as I said, it is vast areas of land, and the people are poor, and they have attacks from the borders, from south, from east, from west, and that is the problem of Sudan.
Okay, we have a statement made by South Sudan's diplomatic mission. He said that there are difficulties with Sudan. How do you read such a statement now in light of the talks that are ongoing?
Well, it is a diplomatic give and take, like usually Bashir feels stronger, of course, since he has been president for so many years, and he is the president of the biggest country like Sudan, and he has been, yes, he was, of course, part of the independence process of South Sudan, but still it is a negotiating pressure that he is using. Sometimes he wants to use that pressure in order to stop the negotiations for peace talks, or he can make it going so that he has certain gains. So it's always a political game that these leaders are playing together. And I know that there was a delegation from South Sudan who asked the support of Egypt a few weeks ago, and I'm sure that Egypt can play a role in this negotiations and in the in between. I mean, the mediation could use Egypt, because I heard also that Egypt is asking Sudan for a big project for agriculture, and this is something that also will help Sudan and will help Egypt and will strengthen the relations, bilateral relations between Egypt and Sudan.
But how far the ending of the disputes between Sudan and South Sudan will affect the political scene in the south?
Well, it is dangerous, of course, because South Sudan is a small country. It's a poor country. It's a new country. It needs support from the international community. And unfortunately, I don't know why the international community was pushing so much and giving a lot of support until it was independent. And then all of a sudden, it is left alone to deal with its problems. And the problems are big because of the poverty, as I said, because of the illegal immigration, because of the migration of the escape of people, civilians on the borders of other countries. So there are lots. Even Sudan, they are suffering from a huge number of migrants during immigrants. I mean. The refugees problem, not the refugees that are leaving from different regions from Sudan, like the Darfur area and the southern Sudan area. So all these, it's more than 4.2 million people who need to be. Who need food, who need lodging, who need camps to stay. Demobilization of these refugees in other areas. It is a big problem that no UN agency or international agency can afford to spend so much on these numbers. So the biggest problem that is going to be there is the solution for the refugees problem.
Okay, regarding Abyei,
Yeah.
why the future of Abyei was left undecided when the referendum on succession was held?
Because there are, of course, these, as I said, these are tools that are used for negotiations. Sometimes Sudan wants to put pressure on the different powers in the region, because even after they take the decision and after the referendum is done and they feel that they have to give it, it takes time in order to, they need to pressure them in one way or another in order to take more profits, more resources, because this is a very rich area in oil, and it took so long in the negotiations in order to give it to have it independent. So it is not easy, of course, to give up the resources, but there are negotiations in order to use these resources for the benefit of the people. How will this happen? How will the people in Sudan, in Abyei, in South Sudan, benefit from all these resources? They have to find a way in order to profit, because the people cannot continue to be poor and needy. There's a percentage of illiteracy, 60%. They have to spend on education, on health, on all this. How can they do this while they are still fighting over land? I feel that this is stupid.
Ambassador Suad, if I ask you about your evaluation for the ongoing situation in Sudan, how do you see it?
As you know, Bashir was indicted by the ICC, and he escaped so many times when they were really preventing him from traveling, and sometimes sanctions that are done on individuals are not really having pressure. because like same like what happened in Zimbabwe for the president of Zimbabwe, the same thing happened. He is allowed to go everywhere in African Union. He goes to the conferences. Same for Bashir, so he escapes from any sanctions. Even his country escaped from sanctions. So there is the only way that could help is his own decision that he wants to do the best for his people, and the people of Sudan have to decide for themselves, because Bashir has been there for a long time, and he has been re-elected, but now it is time to think of the future. Who is going to lead Sudan in the future? There has to be a powerful opposition that will take over later on after his term is ending. So what I feel is good for...
But he's fighting opposition, so he doesn't care about their existence.
No, but this is the only way that to make more louder, you know, the people of Sudan themselves to decide, because as I said, even the two leaders of South Sudan, they have their accounts abroad. They have they don't care about their people as much as they care about themselves. They want to have the power in order to have more presence. Of course, they want to travel. Even when they put sanctions on travel, they escape by being health reasons, for asking to get support of other countries. So they escape and they can travel all around. So whether it is Bashir or the two leaders, they have to find a way to put the target. The first target is to empower their own countries. And if not, then their people have to judge them. It is the people who have to judge their leaders, and the leaders are the ones who can take the decision. So that's...
And what about the situation in South Sudan as well? How do you see it?
Yeah, what I feel that if the unity government succeeds, then they can do something. But still they need the support of Sudan. And if Sudan continues to make problems with them, then they will not achieve what they want. If they get the support of the African Union or the other countries in the region, they have many countries that are friendly to them, and Ethiopia is playing a very good role between mediating role between South Sudan and in Abyei also. So Ethiopia should take a role in the stopping the civil war and monitoring that this unity government will continue to achieve the good for the nation, because the people are suffering so much from this civil war. And if it is possible to stop the traffic of ammunition and of arms to South Sudan, it will be the best thing to do, because it is enough to continue that each party is loaded with
its own problem,
with arms.
Yeah. Well, Ambassador Suad Shalabi, former Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs, thank you very much for joining us, and welcome once again to Africa Today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And by this we get to the end of our episode. I'm Dina Mamdouh. Thank you for watching.